You're standing in the hallway and she asks a simple question. Did you put this here? It sounds innocent enough, so you answer honestly. But then comes another question, and then another, and then another, and then another. Each one feeling more pointed, more loaded than the last. It's here that your heart rate starts to climb. You recognize this tonal shift. You can feel the line of questions morphing the conversation into something you can't control, something that feels dangerous. And for reasons you can't quite fully understand, every word you say seems to dig you deeper into a hole you did not even know you were standing in. She's holding up the object of her line of questions. It's something innocuous, irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, like a bottle of cleaning spray sitting in the laundry. Her eyes angrily staring at the bottle, then onto you. So, why don't you remember putting this here? You pause and panic. You know that every word you're about to say will be like stepping into quicksand. That's what it feels like at the start of an interrogation as a tactic of abuse. When questions are used as both a way to abuse a person psychologically and also control them, all under the veneer of curiosity. Interrogation itself is a difficult tactic to easily identify because it creeps in, disguised as the desire for clarity. But underneath that mask of curiosity lies something sinister. The questions designed to dismantle your confidence, your sense of reality, and your right to be heard without suspicion. It is when questions themselves are used to torture you, to make you feel fear, and to reassert the abuser's dominance over you by establishing a dynamic that you are the one that must explain yourself to them until they are satisfied because they are in charge here. That's what we will explore today: what interrogation is, how it works, and the three interrogation techniques you typically see so that you know what you need to look out for and how to protect yourself. And for those of you who are new here, this is Stand Again, a lived experience platform for male victims of family violence. Abuse is not limited to one gender, but this channel focuses on the male perspective because it is so often dismissed or misunderstood. If this content helps you, please like, subscribe, and type the words Stand Again into the chat. Those two words might just help another man find his. Let's start with the definition of interrogation as an abusive tactic. Interrogation within an abusive relationship is the weaponization of questions, repeated, loaded, or circular questioning that is used to wear you down, provoke anxiety, and also to assert dominance over your thoughts, words, and actions. The questions themselves typically have a hidden agenda. They want to trap you or to confuse you. And sometimes they even want to build justification for an attack on you. The interesting thing here is that the abuse is not in the topic that you are being questioned over. In fact, sometimes the topic is often quite irrelevant. The abuse here actually lies within the act of questioning itself. When someone demands you justify ordinary actions, explain normal behaviors, or defend innocent choices, they're not seeking information, they're trying to establish dominance. The question from earlier, did you put this here, transforms from innocent inquiry into psychological assault when it is loaded with the requirement to justify yourself, or it creates a sense of your actions being suspicious, or if it even positions you as someone who must answer to their authority. What makes interrogation so devastatingly effective is how it masquerades as normal communication. Why did you say that? What did you mean? When exactly did this happen? The questions feel legitimate. You respond honestly, openly, thinking you're having a conversation or a debate, but you're actually walking into a psychological minefield. Answers will not end it, they actually fuel it. The questions will multiply, they'll twist. The abuser will redirect towards implications you never intended. Your responses become evidence of something like inadequacy or dishonesty or even malicious intent. The more carefully you try to explain yourself, the more questions emerge. Each answer you give is dissected, analyzed, and found wanting. Eventually, you realize that no answer will ever be enough because the questions were never about finding truth. This is a test you can't pass, marked by someone who keeps moving the grading rubric. Under interrogation, every conversation becomes a courtroom where you're permanently the defendant, and she positions herself as judge, jury, and fact checker. You start second guessing your words before you speak them. You might even self censor, filtering every thought through the lens of potential questioning later. Even your silence can become suspect, somehow evidence of guilt or manipulation or even defiance. And your normal responses, like confusion, frustration, or the need to defend yourself, will get rebranded as aggression or being irrational, or even proof that you are hiding something. The abuser gains immense psychological leverage from this tactic. They position themselves as the reasonable one, the one I'm just asking questions, while you appear increasingly defensive, emotional, and sometimes even unstable. This creates a power dynamic where they hold the role of judge and jury, while you are left scrambling to prove your innocence in a trial where the rules just keep changing. In time, interrogation will erode your sense of reality. You begin to question your own memory, your own intentions, even your own version of events, because a constant scrutiny makes you doubt whether you're telling the truth, whether you remember things correctly, whether you're the problem in the relationship. This is psychological erosion, and it's precisely the goal to make you dependent on their version of reality, compliant with their demands, and too confused to trust your own perceptions. Let's now explore three specific interrogation techniques. In practice, these will be blended together and coupled up with other tactics like gaslighting and blame shifting, and sometimes you'll even find them in word salad. But for today, we're going to unpack these specific interrogation techniques just to help you see it clearly the next time you are facing it. The first is guided interrogation. Guided interrogation is when an abuser uses leading or loaded questioning to guide the conversation to a predetermined destination. They enter the conversation already knowing where they want it to go, which is usually towards an explosion, a character attack, or forcing you into a position where they can claim justification for their abusive behavior. The questions are building a case, collecting evidence for a trial you didn't know you were attending. There are two flavors to watch out for here. First is leading questions, which are designed to guide you towards the answer the abuser wants to hear. The abuser shapes the questions in a way that makes one particular response seem more reasonable, expected, or even socially acceptable than the others. The abuser isn't genuinely asking the question, they're steering you towards their preferred conclusion. So, for example, they might ask, so you think putting yourself first is more important than your family? That question, which is leading, forces you to either admit selfishness or scramble to defend caring about your own needs. Or they might ask, are you saying I am a liar when I tell you what happened? This makes disagreeing with their version of events feel like a personal attack on their character. The second flavor is loaded questions. They're trickier because they hide accusations inside what looks like a simple question. The classic and most well known example of this is, have you stopped beating your wife? Whether you answer yes or no, you're still admitting that you used to beat your wife. The question itself contains a false claim, disguised as neutral inquiry. In your relationship, this might sound like, why do you always try to make me look crazy in front of others? The question assumes you always do this and that your intent is malicious. Or you might hear, when did you start caring more about work than your own children? This presupposes you've changed priorities and implies neglect, regardless of how you answer. The key difference here is leading questions push you towards their preferred answer through social pressure and framing. Loaded questions force you to accept their false claims about you or the situation just by engaging with the question itself. Either way, both are designed to control the conversation rather than understand what actually happened. This tactic is masterfully deceptive because it begins so innocuously. The first question might genuinely sound like curiosity or a request for clarification. Did you put this bottle here? Sounds harmless enough. You answer honestly, perhaps even helpfully. But that answer becomes the first domino in a carefully constructed line of questioning. The second question then comes: when exactly did you do that? Then, why don't you remember the details? Each question adds a little bit more weight, adds a bit more pressure, adds the implication that something is wrong with your behavior or your memory or even your intentions. The brilliance of this tactic lies in its slow build. By the time you realize that you're being interrogated, you're already several questions deep. You're already on the defensive. Any attempt to step back or even question the line of inquiry is met with apparent reasonableness. Hey, I'm just asking questions. Why are you getting defensive? This puts you into an impossible position. Continuing to answer feeds the interrogation. Refusing to answer is treated as an admission of guilt. Abusers use leading and loaded questioning because it allows them to maintain the facade of rational discourse while trapping their target. They get to appear calm, logical, and justified in their scrutiny, while you become increasingly reactive and defensive. Society teaches us that the person asking the question is in the right. That being questioned means you have something to explain. This cultural assumption becomes the abuser's greatest weapon. The emotional impact of leading and loading questioning goes far beyond the immediate discomfort of being interrogated. Each session teaches you that honest communication is dangerous, that openness leads to attack, that your words will be used against you. This hypervigilance, when it comes to how you converse, is exhausting. It isolates you from genuine connection. Let's now look at the next interrogation technique, which is to pivot and pounce. Pivot and pounce transforms interrogation into, for want of a better term, psychological whiplash. Just when you think you have addressed one topic, the focus suddenly shifts to something completely different. Your tone, or your expression, or something you said last week, or the way you pause before answering. She goes still, then switches topic rapidly. The abuser will pounce on any detail, no matter how minor, and then pivot the conversation to that next target before you can fully respond to the first point that you were trying to respond to. This tactic creates a state of constant emotional and mental destabilization. You can never settle into addressing one issue because the topics keep changing before you can register. Unlike word salad, which uses kind of confused and circular language to obscure meaning, pivot and pounce is different because it uses clear, direct accusations that rapidly change target. The words are precise. The chaos comes from the constant movement between different grievances that she has. Your problem solving brain wants a list. She won't give you one. When you try to address concerns, when you attempt to work through issues methodically, this reasonable approach is actually then reframed as controlling, rigid, or evasive. This tactic thrives because it exploits your desire for resolution and turns that into a weakness. The abuser employs this strategy because it maximizes their control while minimizing your ability to respond effectively. Each pivot prevents you from building a coherent defense or explanation. Each pounce on a new grievance catches you unprepared for the next accusation. The rapid shifts make it impossible for you to address concerns thoughtfully or completely, which is then used as evidence of your inadequacy, your deception. What makes this particularly devastating is how it exploits the natural human desire for resolution. When someone raises a concern, our instinct is to address it fully, to ensure understanding, to repair any damage. Pivot and pounce deliberately frustrates this instinct. Just as you begin to engage with one issue, you're yanked towards another. The original concern is left unresolved, creating this growing pile of unfinished business that can be weaponized in future interactions. Let's do an example of how this might play out. You're discussing why you were 10 minutes late getting home from work, for example. Why didn't you text? She asks. So you explain that you were in back to back meetings, but you had your phone. Yes, but the meeting ran long. You always have an excuse. So now it's about your character. And speaking of excuses, what about last weekend when you said you had fixed that fence? Now it's about a completely different commitment. Your face is doing that thing again. So now it's about your expression. Why are you so angry all the time? So now it's about your emotional state. So you've had five different accusations within 2 minutes, and not one of them has been resolved. The emotional toll of this tactic is profound. It creates a sense of futility around communication itself. Why invest energy in crafting thoughtful responses when the topic is just going to change before you finish speaking? Why try to address concerns sincerely when sincerity is met with a new accusation? This learned helplessness extends beyond individual conversations to start to reshape your entire approach about the relationship. Let's now look at the last technique we're going to explore today, which is the loop and corner. Loop and corner represents interrogation at its probably most psychologically brutal way. It's the same question or a set of questions that return again and again and again, despite you giving clear, reasonable answers. It's like mental waterboarding, the kind of repetitive application of pressure designed to break your resolve, your confidence, and eventually, to be honest, your grip on reality itself. This tactic operates on the principle of cognitive exhaustion. The human brain struggles with repetitive, unresolved loops. When you answer a question clearly and that answer is rejected or ignored, we naturally begin to doubt ourselves. Did we explain it properly? Are we missing something? Is there a better way to phrase our response? The loop exploits this self doubt, gradually eroding your confidence in your own memory and perception and confidence in your ability to communicate. The abuser uses loop and corner because it's devastatingly effective at creating submission. When somebody is forced to answer the same question repeatedly, they eventually break. They might change their answer out of exhaustion, contradict themselves due to confusion, or simply explode in frustration. Each of these reactions can then be used as evidence of instability or deception or even aggression. The abuser gets to maintain the appearance of reasonableness, they're just asking questions for clarity, while destroying their target's psychological equilibrium. The genius of this tactic lies in how it inverts normal conversational expectations. In healthy communication, when someone asks a question and receives a clear answer, the question is resolved. The loop violates this basic social contract, but it does so while maintaining the appearance of inquiry. This creates cognitive dissonance in the target. They know their answer was adequate, but the continued questioning suggests otherwise. The psychological impact of loop and corner extends far beyond individual incidents. It trains you to doubt your own memory and perception. If your clear recollection of events is repeatedly challenged, you begin to question whether you remember things accurately. If your straightforward answers are consistently treated as inadequate, you begin to doubt your ability to communicate effectively. This erosion of self trust is one of the more damaging aspects of psychological abuse. Within the relationship, loop and corner creates a dynamic where the abuser becomes the arbiter of truth and adequacy in communication. They decide when an answer is sufficient, when a memory is accurate, when an explanation is complete. This positions you as perpetually inadequate, always failing to meet standards that shift and change without notice. The power imbalance becomes total because you lose confidence in your own basic ability to perceive and communicate reality. Let's now take a look at some of the tools you can use to protect yourself. The first is to recognize what's occurring, which is why we went through the different techniques before. But you also need to trust your physical and emotional responses. When questions that you're being faced start to make your heart rate climb, when your chest is tightening up during what should be a normal conversation, trust that feeling. There are things that you can do, but to be honest, direct confrontation with an abuser can often escalate the danger. The tools that I'm going to go through are designed more about prioritizing your safety and your psychological protection over winning any particular type of conversation, because winning the conversation is not the goal here. Your safety is. The first and most commonly known technique to use to protect yourself is the grey rock method. And if you're interested, I do have a video on the four things I wish I knew before using grey rock. Grey rock means becoming uninteresting, giving minimal factual responses without emotion or detail, like I don't know, or maybe, or I'll think about it. These boring responses provide less ammunition for the interrogation, but they might actually cause the abuser to pick on the fact that you are not engaged. The second is strategic compliance. Sometimes agreeing superficially will protect your inner reality, creating a bit of safety resistance. You might be right. I hadn't thought of it that way. Are classic examples of strategic compliance. This isn't weakness, it's tactical survival. Your true thoughts here remain your own. The third is something you actually need to do in the moment, which is a physical thing, which is body checking. Keep your feet flat, do a slow exhale, drop your shoulders. When you feel interrogation beginning, ground yourself physically. This 5-second reset helps you think more clearly and respond less reactively. Your body posture affects your mental state. The next is the fog method. This is when you give responses that are vague and non committal. Instead of giving clear answers that can be dissected, respond with uncertainty. I'm not sure exactly. Or it's hard to say. Or I might have. This foggy, vague answer makes it difficult for the interrogator to build their case. Next is more obvious one, which is exit the conversation. When the interrogation escalates, say, "This is not a constructive conversation. I am not answering any more questions." If the interrogation continues to escalate, then you might need to physically separate yourself from the abuser. Know where your keys are, hop in the car, go somewhere safe. Also, just as a safety note, if the questions escalate to threats or you fear false allegations, stop talking. Remove yourself. Call a trusted third party. It's safety over satisfying the question. That's what you need to remember. You might also need to consider getting yourself a safe support network. Identify people you can contact during or after interrogation sessions. Having witnesses to your mental state, people who can validate your experience, and a safe space to decompress are crucial for maintaining your psychological well being. You don't have to win an argument to win your sanity. You can step out. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to play a game that is rigged against you. Walking away from interrogation is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's recognizing that some conversations are not conversations at all. They're psychological attacks dressed up as communication. Remember that interrogation as a tactic of coercive control has nothing to do with your adequacy as a partner or your ability to communicate clearly. It is a psychological assault designed to break down your confidence, your sense of reality, and your resistance to control. Recognizing it for what it is, which is abuse, is the first step towards protecting yourself and reclaiming your voice. When you finally step away from a relationship built on interrogation, one of the most profound experiences is rediscovering the peace of genuine conversation. Questions become bridges to understanding rather than weapons of control. Your words are received with good faith, rather than dissected for hidden malicious meaning. The constant hypervigilance that once accompanied every interaction will begin to fade, replaced by the natural flow of human communication. If this content has helped you recognize something in your own experience, please know that you are not alone. Thousands of men have walked this path before you, and thousands more will need to find their way after you. Your willingness to see this clearly, to name what is happening, and to protect yourself matters. This is Stand Again, lived experience platform for male survivors of family violence. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Your voice might just help another man find his. If you're looking for one on one support, you can book coaching with a member of the Stand Again team. Simply visit standagain.com.au, where you will also find grounded information on surviving and recovering from family violence as a man. As always, remember that no matter how many times you've been knocked down, you can stand again.